All right, welcome to Equal Time Soccer. I'm Matt Pravratsky alongside the two star center backs for the Gopher soccer program. We've got Elizabeth Overberg and Jordy Rothwell doing a name swap. On the right, we got Jordy. On the left, we got E on the right. Thanks so much for joining us, you guys.
No problem. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, first we have to start off with some praise, as Equal Time always does. So we'll shower you two with some praise. For folks who have not been paying attention or listening to my broadcast of Gopher home games, I will repeat a stat I've been saying all the time. Gopher defense has yet to give up a goal in the run of play, which is considerably epic for this long of a non-conference stretch. So that's awesome. Niagara scored on a PK. Milwaukee scored on a big free kick. But other than that, you all have kept every opponent scoreless. And so talk a little bit about what's been working well for you as a group, not just, you two in the center, but also just that defensive unit.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just having a super gritty back line. And we knew coming into the season that there's going to be a couple new people on the line and we haven't played together before. But I think our mentality, that's the biggest thing, is that we're just putting our bodies on the line for everything. So I think that's the initial.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Jordy, how does this group, and even for you, E, there hasn't been a ton of rotation in the back this year, I think, which is fairly standard for a back line anyway, but there has actually been some, and more than I think you typically have seen, or I've always seen with the Gophers. So, Yelena just like worked her butt off, won that left back spot, which is such a cool, moment for her, because I think that spot was actually decently up for grabs. I think considering that she starts all these games, people might not realize that, but I think it's credit to her that she claimed it. But you're still seeing, Taylor Heimerl, which I've half jokingly referred to as the trebuchet because of her big throw in. We can keep workshopping that. You guys can update that nickname anytime you want. But Taylor Heimerl's come off the bench. Krista Van Loon has come off the bench there. For you all, when there are those rotations in the back line, what's sort of the key to making sure you keep your composure back there, you keep your chemistry back there as maybe someone rotates in and out?
I think that the subs that come into the back line, I think it's pretty fluid, honestly. I think coming in after, whether it's like second half switch or after a couple, like 25 minutes or so, I think the biggest thing that we try to hold a standard of is like a gritty mentality, but also communication. So making sure that our line is up together, back together, making sure we're holding our weak side center, outside backs in, just having like general communication to make sure that Taylor, if she's off the bench or whoever's off the bench, knows and gets adjusted into the game. And I think they've done it very wonderfully. So,
yeah, I'm curious too. Like, when you all played St. Thomas, I tried to speak to the Georgia game as much as I could, because I think for folks who didn't watch that Georgia matchup, it was so funny when I talked to Kate after the game and I talked to Aaron after the game, and I expected them to sort of be proud of the tie and like crow about the tie. And I said, hey, how was that Georgia match? It looked pretty crazy. They're like, yeah, man, it could have been better. Like, we really should have got the win. And I sort of loved that. Like, I had forgotten. I was not expecting, like Kate Childers, freshman holding midfield, to be like, man, we should have got the win. The game was so impressive for the defense you all put on, but it was funny to also hear sort of the, God damn, we could have got an SEC road win, which is sort of, I like that sort of, there's like a healthy amount of frustration you can carry, and it felt like a healthy amount of frustration. But despite all of that, like whether there could have been a win or whatever, you lose a chance to get a huge signature win. The defense in that game was so impressive, and I think to appreciate it, you really had to watch the whole thing, because I think there was so much going on. EU had so many moments that are seared into my brain of just like crazy individual defense we're just tracking, and then like Jordy, both you and E had these moments where Georgia had some wingers, man. Like they had some wingers who could just beat you. I mean, like Abby was working her ass off on right wing, but that player she was going up against, number 17, like Holland or something, she could just get by anybody anytime she wanted. Like her first step was so crazy. Yeah. But for you mentioned that communication, Jordy, earlier and all that stuff. What's the key when you're facing a winger like that, who just, no matter who it is, they can beat one player. They can always beat one player, no matter who it is. And so how do you deal with sort of that exact type of threat where you always have to have an eye on it, but you can't just leave the middle and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, obviously what I said before about communication, I think Abby, it's just making sure, like E and I talk of, yes, if they had 50 in the middle and she was a strong forward and she was making really dynamic runs. And I think one time Abby's like, you should come cover me. And I was like, well, I just trust her 1v1 defending so much that I was like, I think in that game we did a good job of covering each other, but at the same time, it's just like making sure that Abby knows that she does have a cover. So if she gets beat, which happens, she's a fast winger and whatnot. But I think it's just having communication and making sure that you have like the covering person there.
Yeah, I think that's our biggest thing that I'm proud of for our team, because we've been working on having those tight seams and just kind of being that cover for each other. And so say you have a good forward that, they can beat anyone. They take a big touch by your outside back, then we're right there to get the ball because they had to take that big touch. So our outside back is slowing them down. And then we're right there because they made them make that decision. So I think it's just more of a team effort rather than that individual 1v1, is that you each have a role to play. You might not win it there, but you're making it easier for your other defender.
Right. There's sort of like a mixture of tools in your toolbox. It's like, okay, well, this winger, we try and force them out because if we let them go center, they can rip it on goal. Or like maybe with a different player, you actually want to force them in because that's where your holding mids are or whatever. Or like if they're so left dominant, Jordy, you say like, no, send them in because like we're here with you. Like they're going down the left. If it's always on the left, like whatever. It's just so funny to see because teams seem to play so differently against you all. I mean, like probably the biggest mainstay of my time covering the Gophers is like game to game, the run of play can be so different, like unbelievably different. And I like Georgia had that quirkiness of having the back five, or if you'd call it a 3-5-2 or whatever you'd call it, with those sort of wing backy type width players. And it felt like, honestly, like some of the attacking players with the Gophers are sort of like, wait, there's sort of like these extra people wide. Like you're like, wait, what the hell? Because no one in the Big Ten that I can think of plays that sort of 5-back or like the whatever. Yeah. And so for you all, is on the attacking side, on the flip side, have there been teams this year where just their offensive shape is so different from each other and it takes a lot of adjustment? Or do you see most of that in film, or is there an element of surprise like on game day?
I would say our coaches do a pretty good job at telling us what we're going to face. We do a lot of film, whether it's on us or future teams we're going to be facing. So we're never really surprised about it. But again, the game's totally different. The coaches can tell you that this is what they're going to come out in, but until you really see it and feel it, you don't really know. But I think we're as prepared as we can be. And it's just really, we have to focus on those details of this is how we're going to break it down. And we have to do it because we know what we have to do.
Yeah. You mentioned, I think I have this right, that, when it gets into sort of position groups and the coaching staff is sort of divvying stuff up, folks will be least surprised to know that, Tara Nupson is obviously working with the keepers. They'll be least surprised to know that, Maya is working with the forwards, being a legendary forward. And so it's kind of a mixture of like Aaron and Allie back with you guys, right? With that positional stuff of like, when it's the position groups, is it sort of those two or one of them in particular that's sort of when it's fully broken down into sort of like multiple phases, is it one of those two who's like leading the sort of positional group stuff for you?
Yeah. Erin does a lot of, she primarily does work with the back line.
Right.
And she was a forward, but I feel like she brings a lot of great coaching points to our back line, and she says defending's black and white, and she'll give us scenarios and we just work them out. And then you see it in the game and you're like, oh, okay, this is, but obviously like things change and there's different pieces everywhere, but for her to go through different scenarios, it makes it easier in our head. Say there's no pressure on the ball. Like, what do you do? Or this girl's coming in, they're playing two front. What happens then? So it's like we're able to work through things. And as a back line, we collaborate. And I think that the individual groups is really awesome to be able to like solve problems together, whether off the field before we go on the field. So.
Right. That's like depending on the day, I'm sure it feels like a nice giant bonus or an extra added scary burden to have the head coach as your positional group person. You're like, okay, well, we're getting a direct line straight to the head coach, but also, Aaron's giving our stuff directly, so don't mess up. Okay, here we go. That's so funny. And I love how you speak to it, Jordy. The idea of the black and white element. It doesn't mean that like everything is success or failure, but in some sense it kind of is. It's like the possession either was success or not, and it's kind of funny. The binary nature almost makes me think of like a decision tree. It's like if they have two front, what do you do first? Then if their two front is splitting you out wide, then what's your next thing? Then if they do that, it's sort of like the decision making and the calculus for sure. E, for you, we joked before we started recording. I think the last time you were on for like a longer show was when you were a freshman, and that that makes me think of each season for you has been pretty different. Like this is probably the first year I think where you come in where you feel like your role is at least written closer to pen than pencil. And you've played a significant role each year, but I don't think anyone could say they would have predicted precisely what that role would be. Your freshman year, obviously there's a terrible injury last exhibition game. You just, ho-hum, start on the back line, crush it as a freshman. Last year, the team had plenty of tweaks to their rotation as things went on. You ended up playing a ton of games at center back, just looked so good back there. But how has this fall felt for you compared to those other years where I think, anyone who followed the team, whether we're in charge of the rotation or not, the on paper guess would be, okay, well, there's one returning center back. It'll be E. Hopefully they go out and get some shiny grad transfer who happens to be sitting next to you now and to start with you again. But it's like, how does this fall feel compared to those first 2 years where you feel like maybe there's a little more certainty?
Yeah, it totally is different each year. And even now it's not totally certain, but it just gives you that confidence. And just being an upperclassman, you have all those past years of experience, and you can do it because you've done it before. So right. I think that's nice to take into a season. I'm like, I know this is the position I'm going to be playing, and I know how to fight for it because I've done it before. I think what's been different this year is that Jordy and I got to play together a lot this summer at our captain's practices, and I didn't get to have that my first 2 years because I wasn't up here as early as I was this summer. So I think that was super helpful that Jordy and I could just get to know each other's playing styles like in early June and just really get to know each other, which is you need to know in the back line.
Yeah. Well, especially you two. I think there's, everyone, if you sit outside, the times when I'm in the booth, I sort of forget how loud Plashko is. And then you go to a game in person, you realize how loud Plashko is. But then the other thing is you hear your voices, you hear the other, you hear Bowman in the attack, whatever. And it's actually really fun for me because I'm watching streams or I'm watching from the booth so much. Watching a game in person, like I was down in Omaha for the Creighton match yesterday, and it's actually the things you pick up of like players like yelling at each other and yelling because you're on a field, like like shouting at each other and communicating with each other. It's actually really interesting. Like there's little nuggets of like how people communicate and how people respond where it's actually pretty like fun little like mini almost like baby gossip for me. I'm like, oh yeah, this player always yells this. Okay, they always yeah, cool. And for you, E, I think like that Georgia game, you've had plenty of good games before. I mean, like you've been consistent, time in, time out. But that Georgia game to me was sort of just like nutso. And for you individually and equally in the St. Thomas game, there were so many individual plays where like your individual defense seems so sharp. And I think, the eye test has shown you just like grow each year. And even to be honest, the stats, like when you go into a Y Scout or one of those models, your stats actually like have just improved every year and you were already pretty solid as a freshman. But to you, does it feel different for you as a player? Like, do you feel either more confident in things you're willing to try now versus before, or like when you'd ask for help now versus when you don't, or like does it feel different on the field for you?
Yeah, I would say it does. I mean, freshman year, playing a new position, I was just trying to not mess up, honestly. You have a role, you keep the ball out of the back of the net, but like offensively, I was just supposed to connect the ball, do my job.
Right.
Like that's all I could do. But this year, just each year you build that confidence and you know what to look for, especially on the attack. And that's something we've been working on as a back line is we're the start of the attack. And it's our job to connect, but when there's something on forward, it's our job to hit that ball. So I think that's something I've felt is different is I'm looking for those more dangerous balls because I know I can hit it. And I've been playing with the people in the middle and up top for quite a bit. And so I know what runs they're going to make, and I trust them more too. So that's something I feel is different. And 1v1 defending, we work on it so much in practice, a lot. So that has helped me build confidence because I'm going against some of the best attackers, I think, in the Big Ten every day. So it's nice to get that practice. So
I wouldn't exactly find it chill to have to defend Megan Nemec and Bowman and Romine and Paige and everybody. That would suck. Well, I guess, and you two get to have like Izzy's shoulder in your chest all day, so that's also like, wow, what fun to have. This is great. Izzy's just like beating the hell out of me with her like strong frame. What a party this is in practice. And Jordy, for you, you've played so many games in your career. You obviously had a fun homecoming moment going down to Creighton. You're from Wisconsin, but you starred for 4 years in Creighton in the Big East. But for you being in this system and obviously having those captains practices, all that kind of stuff, is there anything that's been sort of unique for you in this system versus what you were playing before in terms of what's being asked of you or sort of reads you're making or any of that stuff in terms of, obviously a lot of what center backs do is similar across teams, but is there anything that you've been like, oh, okay, I actually haven't been asked to do this before. Oh, this is actually different for me on these kind of situations. Is there anything about this experience that's pushed you in terms of either role or system or any of that?
I think right away, just like the first couple of practices about like the coaching points that I received were just pretty different than what I was receiving at Creighton. And they weren't like bad different. It was just thinking about different concepts or thinking about 1v1s in a different light. I think the way that kind of challenged my mentality and how I go out on the field as well. I think one of the biggest things too is at Creighton, we played a 3-5-2. Right. And so being the center in the 3-back, you didn't really have freedom to dribble up forward or do much with that, which was fine. But it was like you make a bad pass, and then sometimes it's you three were just kind of isolated. So I think it's been nice, like you said, like E is just a great defender, and she comes up time and time again. So it's like I pass the ball away and she's there, and like she'll pass the ball away and sometimes, and then I'll be there. And so I think having like a 4-back or just having other people next to you it's just better to have that cover, and it just makes it better, like to have a nice defensive unit. And having a 3-back was great, and the two that I played with were amazing. They covered me all the time, but it's just, I really enjoy the system, and I think coming here has been a new challenge, and it's been fun to play with E. So
yeah, well, and I have to imagine that 3-back to 4-back, one of the differences too, other than like the tactical stuff and whatever and responsibilities and whatever, when you talk about communication, one of the maybe quote unquote luxuries of that 3-back when you're the center back is like you truly can just tell them both, like within your space, you can really get both within your earshot. When you're in a 4-back, I'm assuming at least a little bit, you actually have to rely on you and E being on the same page, because there are times where E is going to have to deliver that message to Yell or Taylor or Krista. And sort of, it's almost like a 2-stage process versus a 1-stage process where like you two have to be on the same page first, because then you are communicating out to your outside backs, versus like when you're that center back, you're sort of like, hey, fucking read off of me. Like I'm in the middle. Like just, you say to the outside backs, you're like, keep the side of your eye, read me. When it's a 4, you need sort of that 2 phase. Has that felt a little bit different for you, the communication style?
I mean, a little bit. It is hard. Like sometimes if Yell is pretty far away, so yelling at her to either tuck in or whatnot. I mean, it's not super far, and I can yell that far, but it is, just me and E just be on the same page. And I think we're told a lot of the times of like things, what we need to do and what standard we need to hold for our back line. So I think most of the time we see it and we kind of see the same thing. And so we're pretty much saying the same thing at the same time. So I think that works, and it's pretty fluid. So
yeah, it's funny you mentioned like all of us are getting, all of you are getting sort of the coaching points as well. So there is an amount of same paging you have to do, but also like we know what we're supposed to be doing. Like that's sort of the undertone of what you seem to be saying. And a moment in the St. Thomas game sticks out to me where, it was roughly 1,000 degrees that day. So there were water breaks, and the second half, I was calling the game with Gopher alum Maddie Gaffney. She was subbing in, and one thing that really jumped out to me, this like tiny little detail, was the water break in the second half is usually between like the 20 or 25th minute and a half.
Mhm.
And you look, and it's not crazy to see a team really like crew up and coach up, like to see like the St. Thomas coaches or any team, the coaches really sort of do a refresh and sort of bring the group in and like do a hardcore, like focus on this, focus on this, focus on this. And so I looked over, and during the second half break, the coaches didn't bring you all in at all. I mean, they gave you water, like you guys got water, but there was not some giant like, hey, it's 1-0, go score some damn goals. Like there was not like a full regroup. There was not like a what the hell. There was not like a tighten up. It was just, so to me, I read it as they know the players know what they're supposed to be doing. Like whether the goals are coming or not, like everyone knows. We don't need to restate it 50 times like a lot of these random like male coaches who are just screaming all day long. And so that was sort of like a unique moment for me. Was I reading that right in the sense that like coaches are like, listen, they know what they're supposed to be doing, like even if stuff isn't happening? Is there that level of trust and expectation of like, dude, we gave you the game report, we did all the film, you know what you're supposed to be doing, it's on you once we're on the field?
Yeah, I would say, especially in the second half, we've already had our halftime break, and we already know that we're on the same page. And I think at that point, it was just us talking with each other, like what we see. It was us talking with our forwards saying like, hey, this is what's on, or take your shot. And they're telling us like, you only have 1% on your line. You can be a little more risky with things that you're doing. So it's just, it's on us. Like Erin was there, of course, she's saying, hey, like you guys are there. It's going to happen. And it's just at that point, it's on us. We know what to do. And really, it's about us coming together and getting everyone on the same page and everyone loosened and relaxed enough to do what we know that what they can do.
Well, you mentioned earlier, E, one thing I'm super curious about, both of you spoke to the idea that you are the start of the attack. Because I think there's sort of like a funny dynamic of like, we've had so many games this year where you keep it scoreless. But just like maybe the team as a whole isn't able to get on the board, or like maybe the entire game is scoreless, or maybe you drop 1-0 against Milwaukee because, you know, it's a funky small field and the game just grinds down, whatever the hell. But for you all, you mentioned like taking the risk in the attack. And that's something I know Erin has mentioned multiple times of like needing, sometimes the attacking unit isn't taking the risks, but then other times I know I've heard her speak like generally to the idea of wanting the back line to also take some risks of like, hey, send some balls. Like if it's ground down, we need you guys to get nuts and like send some big balls over the top. And the Gophers will never be like a kick and chase soccer 1.0 team. But for you two, how much in your careers has that been a part of your skill set in terms of being able to send a big ball or find someone downfield or like read, you know, multiple lines ahead of like, hey, is Izzy getting into a spot? Is like, you know, Nemec still, I don't think has been fully unlocked on the run, like that kind of thing. How much of that has been part of your game in terms of making those reads sort of 3 phases up and trying to make those, you know, crazy 50-yard like bomb passes?
Yeah, I'd say we have to be risky, but like smart risky, if that makes sense. Like be brave in another sense. Like we have to be confident in ourselves that we can hit those balls, but in the other parts, we just need to be able to connect, move the ball. Because while we might see like, oh, this long ball's on, but then it's like Megan might have just made that run, or Paige or Rowe. And so to take into account, is that just going to be a turnover? Because if we just dump it in their half and we had someone else we could have connected to, I think we do a good job of being aware of like, this could be on, but this other pass I know could work, and we're not going to lose the ball if we just defended for quite a bit. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think in what game was it? St. Thomas first half. And even the Georgia game, it was just we were dribbling up and we didn't play any balls. Like we were just searching. You need to quit searching and make sure you know where you can play it. And I think most of the times, what I've been told at least too is if you're going to take 3 or 4 touches, people already know you're going to serve it. So if you're going to take some touches forward and you're going to just serve it, then the backline's going to read it and it's just going to be picked off. So it's like if you're going to play that big ball, you got to know you're going to play the big ball on your second touch, so that the line isn't adjusted and whatnot. So I I think that's a part of the responsibility, and I think that as a center back, that is the expectation on like kind of any team you're on, is just to have that range of passing and have that vision too, because we are like the first line of offense, but we have to make our passes. Like giveaway is a goal, so most times. So
yeah, that is really funny. You mentioned like the idea of even like what's your tell, you know, like it's like your ball could be as perfect as you want it to be. Like last year, you know, Cesaroni had a great long ball. Delaney had a good long ball. I've seen both of you be able to send a good long ball, but it's like you can have the best pass in the entire world, but if you cue it super early and the defender can react, that's so funny. I thought about that too. Well, and oh shoot, I forgot. Well, we'll see if I remember it to go back to. Let folks know today's show is brought to you by longtime partner Pentz Homes. I've personally worked with Nate and Lydia. I'm sitting in a home that they helped my wife Rochelle and I buy, so can't ride any harder for them than that. So props to Pentz Homes. Find them for all your real estate needs, pentzhomes.com or at Pentz Homes. And our new beverage partner, look at this, Modist Brewing. Take a look. Props to them. They make great beers, seltzers, THC seltzers, and THC gummies. Really good merch. Look out. Here we go. I'm a Modist boy, you guys. I'm going all in. So they're right by Target Field or Target Center. So swing by them before Twins or Lynx playoff games. That's my tip for all the fans. Get nuts. Do downtown Minneapolis. Do it right. Well, let's jump in. There's some random thing popping in my head, but we'll see if I remember it going on. Let's jump in and talk just for a second about conference play getting rolling. So you guys wrapped up conference play with the draw at Creighton. I sort of half jokingly said to a few Gopher parents when I was down in Omaha, like, this year's Creighton team knows how to get a draw. They got a draw against you guys. They know how to grind to a result, and they got another one. So props to them. But now conference play is about to jump in. For some context, for some hardcore Gopher nerd fans, the Gophers were 4-6 in the Big Ten in the first year of the Chastain era. So that'd be E's freshman year. Last year, the team was 4-4-2, so a slight improvement, moving 2 of those losses over to the tie column. That 500-ish record is usually good for like that 6th to 8th in the conference. So that's where the Gophers finished last year, 8th place. I know the team has a stated goal of winning the championship. I have then translated that in Matt words to mean they need to get a top 4 seed because that's the best path. I think having like a home game in the first round. So I have translated Big Ten championship in Matt words to mean top 4 seed. So to get a top 4 seed in the last few years, usually it means to be a game or 2 over 500 in conference play. So you guys are about to start a nice stretch. We mentioned before we started recording, this schedule is kooky as hell. There's almost no blocks. It's all Splitsville. So at Michigan, then home versus Michigan State, then at Iowa, then home versus Wisconsin, at Indiana. Then you get 3 in a row. We're home with Illinois, which is on Big Ten for all you cable nerds. Ohio State, Nebraska at home, then a double at Northwestern and at Purdue. But for you all, as you start conference play, is there any sort of mindset shift or just reset in terms of, okay, you know, we think of non-conference as providing what it provides, and now we have this new battle to go through? Like, what's the mindset shift in terms of, okay, here we go. These are the games that quote unquote count even more, or however you think about it?
Yeah, I think our team has harped on it a lot that non-conference, those games do matter for like our RPI, but we want to learn as much as we can from all of those games. Each game gave us a different look at what other teams might want to play against us. And we've had different weather conditions, different game times. So I think it's really just seeing how we can respond to just different adversity that we might face. And I think as Big Ten's coming, it's just a different mindset. It's forgetting all those things that like we were super mad about and just taking what we can from it. And it's just different. I don't know. You know?
Every point counts.
Like every little tiny thing. Like what was it? 1 point last year separated just like 3 teams. It was insane. So it's just not, your mindset just has to be so locked in, and it has to, that's just kind of what we're.
And you just have to do your job and be clinical. Like after the Creighton game, we let up a few, like there's a few goals. I mean, one of them was just kind of BS that got when Kaya scored the goal already.
Yeah, there's multiple equal time followers got to see multiple angles of that. I was standing behind the Creighton defensive goal, the Gopher offensive goal, so I got another angle of it too. Even the broadcast angle, it did not look like a foul, and then the one I took literally behind the net, it's like peak non-call, like so frustrating. But that can happen.
Yeah, adversity.
Yeah, and so I think that the biggest thing going into conference play is we need to be clinical in all positions. Yes. As a forward, it's your job to score goals, and we need to score goals. And as defenders, we need to get shutouts, and we need to continue to get shutouts, because the teams in the Big Ten, they don't mess around. They're going to go out in every game, and they're going to work hard. And there's a lot of high seeds. And I mean, Michigan just beat Notre Dame. That's a good stat for them. Right. And we're coming off a good non-conference season, but it's also we need to keep putting our head down and keep working hard, because nothing is going to be given to you in the Big Ten regular season. And take every point you can and just kind of grind it out, because it's conference, it's game time. So
it's like we remind ourselves is what we work all year for, all of the hard workouts in the spring, winter, and the summer. This is what it's for. And it's just, especially in the Big Ten, anyone can beat anybody. That's a big thing we've learned, is that there's never just like one unbeatable thing. Like each game's close. It's like 2-1, 1-0. You have to be able to have those blinders on and just focus on what you need to get done. And I think that's what we've been doing all non-conference, and what we're really going to start on this upcoming week.
Well, and you mentioned there's usually not one team that's unbeatable, and there's certainly almost never teams that are a guaranteed win. Like the story of like my era of covering Gopher soccer has been far more about the Gophers in the worst year in the program history. They beat like a top 10 team in the country. I mean, like there is never a time where a game is guaranteed. I mean, never. And so it's like every game you go into, you mentioned earlier, one thing that did finally pop back into my brain, the idea of sort of, what teams are going to be doing, and you can be well prepared. And then you also have to be ready on the day, like you have to be ready. And the game against Indiana last year is the one I'm thinking of, where they made an entire like 10-game stretch where their whole thing was that they had like 9 straight games of not allowing a goal or something, or like 8 shutouts or some crazy stat. The keeper had, because of that, had 100% save percentage, like 9 games into the year or something. And so everyone predicts them to come in, and it's like, oh, how are the Gophers going to break them down? It's going to be so hard. And then there was like, I'll just say it, like I think a little bit of arrogance on the Indiana coaching staff's part, and they decided to just play super forward. They played super attacking against Minnesota, and I think you all beat them like 3-0, and they hadn't given up a single goal all year, because they just threw out their game plan, and they were just like, all right, let's go. Let's come into Minnesota. Let's score some goals. And so you do have to be prepared, because you don't know when a coach might go kooky or ambitious or whatever. And so, who knows? Well, and Jordy, for you, I'm sure you've played against, some of these Big Ten teams, frankly, just by randomness and because of non-conference, and obviously you being from Wisconsin, you're at least like vaguely familiar with the Big Ten, I'm sure. But for you, what's it going to be like for you now playing a different conference slate after sort of getting to know all those standard foes down in the Big East?
I'm excited. I personally have never played against a Big Ten team, just because of we played them in the spring, and I was most of the springs. So I'm excited to go and play. I mean, each team is going to come with a unique challenge, and I think the Big East, we kind of knew who the strong teams were, and I think consistently in the Big East, it's always the same teams. Like Georgetown is always the top. I think the Big Ten is, like, especially last year, no one knew that Michigan State was going to do well, or Nebraska, you know. So I think every year in the Big Ten is different, and I think there's a lot more variability, and I think it's exciting. I think our schedule is great, and I think we have great teams at home and we have great teams away, and I think we're going to go in and we have a great team. So I think it's going to be really awesome. So
It's how much guidance have you given Jordy about some of these road trips? You've been through it now, so you all will be in Ann Arbor. You'll be in Iowa City, which I will be at that game. Sweet Iowa again. God, they're just dragging me down there all the time. You play at Indiana, at Northwestern, at Purdue. Which of those sort of road trips would you tell Jordy to get psyched about? for a Big Ten road trip of those of Ann Arbor, Iowa City, Bloomington, Indiana, Northwestern, and Purdue. Let's go. Which one? Shout one of them out.
Probably Northwestern. I didn't play at Michigan any of the years, or Indiana, I don't think. But Northwestern, their environment's different, I think, because it's right on the water, so it's going to be windy. It's on turf. They've got the fans, and it's in Chicago, so that one is just different, I think, because it's just a different environment. And Northwestern, they were really good last year.
Yeah.
Like all the Big Ten. But I think that field, it's a different environment. So you play different.
If the random uncle or cousin or whatever person drove the boat by the stadium with a Gopher flag, the last time the Gophers played at Northwestern, in the broadcast, the whole time, all you saw was a boat going back and forth with a Minnesota flag. If that person is listening or watching the show, drinks are on me that whole weekend. I'll be down there. Drinks are on me. It was great. It was so cool. I loved it.
I think it was someone who knew Caroline, our freshman Caroline, because she's from Illinois. Yeah.
Whoa. Okay. Some bird cell connection. Okay,
right. I don't know all the deets, but
I've seen, Caroline. So for folks who haven't been tracking, Caroline Birdsells from Illinois, she was like an unbelievably hyped attacking incoming freshman, but had a heartbreaking knee injury in the spring, and so she's out. But you see her at games all the time. If folks go to games, you'll see her. It's almost like too much of a tease to see her out there like doing random soccer stuff, and you just like want to see her suit up. So, but she's from Illinois, so some connections there. All right, you two. Now it gets serious. Classes have started. And so, unfortunately, I have to mimic the academic calendar. We are going to do a couple of pop quizzes because that is what occurs. So the first one, Jordy and E, we're going to do a teammate quiz. These are going to be, they're not complicated questions. It's 6 questions. I'll give you a question and just hold the answer in your head until I throw it to you to give it to you. So the first question, if someone on the Gopher soccer team for 2023 had to make a PK to save your life, who are you choosing? And just think of it in your head, and then I'll throw to one of you at a time.
Wow.
Don't worry, there'll be 6 of these, so you can spread around the love. Don't worry. Jordy, let's go to you first.
I would say Bowman.
What do you think, E?
I was going to say Bowman. We see it the most because she practices a lot in practice, so I know she can make it. I also have a lot of faith. Paige, Kate, just solid clinical. So
nice. Couple of freshmen getting throwouts on the PK. Yep. Like look at the chops of these young Gophs. I love it. Next one, similar question, but I'm going to pivot. PK to save your life. Which coach are you taking? And E will make you go first this time, so that if one of you has to get cut, you'll risk it for you and Jordy.
I'm thinking
I would say Allie too. I think I've never seen her play. I mean, she plays sometimes in practice, but I think she's sneaky technical, and she's a center mid, and so I think she was
nothing against the other coaches.
No, nothing against anyone, but I think she would
compose. Yeah, what she needs to do.
I'm impressed with the Allie answer because there's 2 punt answers to that question. For any question about the coaching staff, you could just say Aaron because you don't want to ruffle any feathers. 100%. And for a PK question, you could just say Maya because she's a legendary scoring forward. So you guys saying Allie means I think you're actually answering, which is great, which is really great. There are times, E, I can't even remember if I've seen you do this. There are times on these road trips, we're about to get into more of the road trip season, where I see some good team content on either Insta or whatever. It is usually the mini mic related, the absurd mini mic that exists only for social media. I believe I've seen some karaoke content, or maybe I've only heard of it on like bus road trips. So I'm not asking you to perform live on air right now, either of you, but who is the team's best road trip bus singer when that breaks out on the bus?
Okay.
Alex.
100%. Alex is a legit amazing singer.
What do we get from her? What's Alex's style? What's the vibe? What's the
She's
go-to?
a belting soprano. So that's like Shallow, by Lady Gaga. It's amazing, but she's super humble about it, so she never sings. So it's more us being like, Alex.
Do we ever get 80s and 90s from Alex? Do we ever get any of that?
She loves 80s rock. That's her favorite genre.
Well, because if anyone goes to games or actually sees Alex in person, I don't remember when the haircut took place, but as soon as she went to like this look, holy shit! It's a great like a curl it's
her.
Like an undefeated like 80s 90s like pop rock look. Like it is. This is unbelievable, Alex. Frankly, we're going to do a karaoke feature with you at Blackheart. We're going to get some content out of this because this is amazing. Look out, Alex. We are coming for you. This is a more on the ground one. Who is maybe an underrated or even a rated hardest worker in training?
This is hard. We have
we'll give the umbrella statement that everyone is hard workers. Don't worry, this does not mean whatever. But Jordy, who do you got?
I think that's. I mean, that's just I think that's an impossible question because
okay.
It's not somebody that like. I feel like everyone is there and everyone puts their head down and works hard.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, Bowman and Rowe are obviously always all around the fields, but I think a lot of people work hard and give it their all the time. So
yeah,
that's great. It's having a high give a shit factor is like pretty important. So that's good.
Yeah.
So this is another one. It's athletics based, but this time outside of soccer. Which teammate do you think is the best athlete outside of soccer? So any other, you could pick if you happen to know any other sport they're great at or some other athletic endeavor. Who would you say is the best non-soccer athlete?
Taylor.
Besides us,
yeah.
Totally. Obviously.
Yeah, Taylor's good.
What do you see? What does she show off?
She was a track runner. I think what I've heard from her is like, just give me any sport. And like, I know she's good at spike ball and like, she's just good. It's great hand-eye coordination. It's just kind of an athlete. So.
She's good. Maddie Raymond. She's an athlete. She can do a backflip.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
She's
Maddie.
Really cool. Yeah.
This is, although this puts a lot of pressure on her now to eventually get a goal, because then I will demand. Here's where I'll put it up, Maddie. Even if it's a spring game, an exhibition, whatever game it is, if there's a game where you do a backflip as a celebration, Equal Time will give you a $250 NIL bill just from that, straight up, on the record. And by the way, if anyone else can do a backflip, the offer stands for them as well. So we'll see. Also, if anyone wants to do an outrageous celebration of any kind, we'll probably reward that with a deal, because college game is not celebration town. There's not a lot of cellies. So if someone pulls a celly, we'll think about it. Now you two are brainstorming. I like it. And if you two connect on a goal, that we would do one for sure. This is if that ever happened. Oh, I do. Jordy, was it against St. Thomas where you had the cross in to, wasn't it? And I remember even on the broadcast I said, I love that I just got to say the phrase "cross into the box" by Jordy Rothwell. Like it was, and led to a goal. It was a great ball, but it was like the times where you will be on the wing ready to send in a cross.
I don't know what to do with there.
Great ball though. This is the last one about the teammates. This is actually just a question for me to know. I have now broadcast Gopher soccer games with, I think, 6 different alums at given times. Of anyone on the current Gopher soccer team, who do you think would make the best broadcaster 4 soccer games? This is good. You guys look so thoughtful. I'm just gonna post a GIF of you guys thinking, like just this sitting there thinking.
Probably Plashko. Only because she doesn't really.
She's not afraid.
Yeah. Stop talking. Ro would be good. She knows probably like the most about soccer, very into it, but like she wouldn't be as like
verbose
the whole time as Plashko. So the pairing I think would be great of those two.
I didn't even. Yeah, Jordy, you said combine them, or even E, you said have them do it together. That would be pretty good.
That would be perfect.
That would be pretty good. I like it. I'll work on my lab work, see if we can combine those two. That'd be great. That would be interesting for a lot of soccer reasons too. Yeah. Lastly, we have a second pop quiz. As we said, class has started. Unfortunately, there's a second class today. This one is even more glamorous. Jordy, you're from Wisconsin. You played in sunny Nebraska for the first 4 years of your college career. Elizabeth E., you are from Iowa, sunny Iowa, just south of the border. You both play in Minnesota. So we are going to ask you some questions specifically about those 4 states. And these questions have absolutely nothing to do with soccer. So here we go.
Okay.
First one is actually, let's start with a slightly more normal one that people would expect. All of these states produce quite a bit of corn. I'm sure you guys know that, having had to drive across all of Iowa recently. Of those 4, and so hold it to yourselves, rank them in terms of where they rank in corn production for U.S. states. So Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Nebraska. And E, we're going to make you go first because corn reasons. And
I just got to go with Iowa first. I mean, home state, got to stay loyal. It's corn everywhere. Nebraska too, because they're the Cornhuskers. There has to be a reason. They're talking about corn the whole time. I'm not in Wisconsin that much. So then Minnesota, then Wisconsin.
What do you think, Jordy? What do you think about her list?
I like the first 2. I think Iowa, Nebraska, then it would be Wisconsin, and then Minnesota. Okay. But I don't know.
I remember those 2 a little.
E actually did have it. Iowa is the top state. Nebraska is 3rd. Minnesota is 4th. And then Wisconsin's all the way back at 8th. They're too busy raising cows. Too busy raising cows. There's no room for corn. Second question, even more glamorous. In terms of gross domestic product, which is a rough metric for like the size of the economy, et cetera. E, I know you're into like political stuff, so you need to track this. Jordy, I'm sure this will somehow factor into exercise science, so you also need to know it. So Jordy, if you want to guess first, you can, between those 4 states.
I would say Nebraska.
As the top one?
Yeah.
What do you think, E? Who do you think the top one is?
So is this? I might just have to go with Iowa again. I know they produce a lot of ethanol, so and that comes from corn. So maybe that factors into it.
This is actually one of the ones where Wisconsin does best. Minnesota was top. Minnesota's top, by the way. Minnesota has a lot of Fortune 500, so they drive some GDP. And then they are 20th, and Wisconsin is 21st, so pretty close. Then Iowa, then Nebraska. And by the way, the moms are loving this content. They're drinking this in. I could keep these quizzes going all day long. Next one, we'll just do one final question. I'll skip a couple of these because it is not that interesting. Final question. This is a survey of the happiest states. This was done by Wallet Hub, so we have to trust this. This is real. This is basically BuzzFeed quiz level of information. This is real. How do you think they rank in terms of happiness, which is a metric, I'm sure, based on some weird data sets, but vaguely based on something? Let's make you go first on this. Try and rank the 4.
On happiness?
This is the thing that like state tourism bureaus share and populate. You know, they're psyched when a state does well and stuff like this. So we're helping all these states' tourism bureaus.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard because it's hard to know what requirements they have to make you happy, but
So true.
Minnesota, I'd say, is up there. Happy,
Mhm.
got big
Mhm.
fair, people like hunting, and everyone's happy. And then
Wait, Jordy, who do you think second is?
I think.
You are right. Minnesota is first. Who do you think second is?
Wisconsin probably.
I appreciate you riding for them. They're actually fourth.
Wow. Okay.
But so between Iowa and Nebraska, who do you think is second?
Iowa.
You're also riding for Iowa. Look at you two riding for your hometown state.
Yeah, we can't.
One of the rare ones where Nebraska came in second, so good for them. And I know who's to say? Who's to say?
That's weird.
So for everyone who made it 50 minutes into the show, you got to see Gopher star center backs Elizabeth Overberg, Jordy Rothwell crush it with a couple of pop quizzes because, as we know, their student athletes and classes started. Yes. They're going to be taking quizzes all day long. I'm sure quizzes still exist or whatever students do now. Gophers just wrapped up their non-conference slate against Creighton. Tough draw on the road. They head on the road to face Michigan and Ann Arbor this week. Thanks so much for joining us, you guys.
Yep.
No problem. Thank you.